All right, good morning, everybody, to this wonderful Thursday, the 8th of Tammuz, July 7th. Let's continue with the Chumash, where we're holding in Parshas Chukas. The Yidden are traveling in the desert. The Yidden are traveling in the desert, and they tried to go through Edom, and Edom said no, and they're in the city of Kadesh. So let's see what happens. They traveled from Kadesh, and the entire congregation of Israel arrived at Mount Har. Kol ha'eda, the entire congregation, Rashi says, all were perfect, ready to enter the land. There was not among them even one of those upon whom the decree had been pronounced, for all those destined to die in the desert have already perished. And these were of those about whom it is written, you are all alive this day. In other words, everyone who was there was ready to go into the land of Israel. Har ha-har, Mount Har. Rashi says it was a mountain atop a mountain, appearing like a small apple atop a big apple. And even though the cloud of glory used to level out mountains for the Jewish people to make it easier for them to walk, they left three mountains: Mount Sinai for the giving of the Torah, Mount Nebo for the burial of Moshe, and Mount Har, this mountain, for the burial of Aaron, as we're going to see right now. Vayemer Hashem el Moshe vel Aaron b'har har al gvul eretz Edom lemar. And Hashem said to Moshe and Aaron on Mount Har, on the border of the land of Edom, saying, why does it mention anything about the border of the land of Edom? What does that have anything to do? It was because they tried associating themselves with the wicked Esav, who Edom comes from, that unfortunately, this is the time that Hashem called back the neshama of Aaron. Yasef Aaron vel el amav ki lo yaveh el haaretz. Aaron shall be gathered to his people, shall pass away, for he shall not come to the land asher nasati l'bnei Yisrael, that I have given to the Jewish people. Al asher merisem es pi l'mei meriva, because you defied my word at the waters of dispute, the mei meriba. Take Aaron and Elazar his son and go up onto the mountain of Hor. What is Kachas Aaron? Take Aaron with words of solace. Say to him, you are fortunate that you can see your crown given over to your son, something I do not merit. In other words, you've left a great legacy. Comfort Aaron as you ascend up to the Mount Har. Vayavshet es Aaron v'es begodov v'hilbashtam es Elazar b'noi v'Aaron Yosef u'meisram. Strip Aaron of his garments and dress Elazar his son with them. This is the garments of the Kohen Gadol, as Rashi says. Then Aaron shall be gathered into his people and die there. And this is what happened. Vayas Moshe kashar tziva Hashem. Moshe did as Hashem commanded, Vayalu es Har le'enei kol ha'eda, and they ascended Mount Har in the presence of the entire congregation. Vayas Moshe did this. Rashi says, although it was very difficult for him, he did not hesitate. Pasuk Chavches Vayavshet Moshe es Aaron es begodav, and now it's saying what Moshe actually did. Before it was saying what Hashem commanded. So Moshe then stripped Aaron of his clothes, Vayalbish Oisam as Elazar b'nai, and he dressed Elazar, his son, not his son, Aaron's son, dressed him in the big day kahuna, in the Cohen's garb. Vayamas Aaron Sham V'Rosh Har, and Aaron passed away over there at the top of the mountain. Vayered Moshe v'Elazar min Har, and Moshe and Elazar descended from the mountain. Pasuk Chavtes. Vayiru kol ha'eda. The whole congregation saw ki gava Aaron, that Aaron had passed away. Vayivku es Aaron shloshim yom kol bnei Yisrael, and the entire house of Israel wept for Aaron for 30 days. let's look at some of these Rashis, some interesting Rashis here. The whole congregation saw. When they saw that Moshe and Eleazar came coming down, and Aaron did not come down, they said, "Where is Aaron?" He said to them, "He died." They said, "Is it possible that the one who stood up against the angel and stopped the plague can be overpowered by the angel of death?" They didn't believe it. Whereupon Moshe asked for mercy, and the ministering angels showed Aaron to them, lying in the bed. They saw him and believed. The entire house of Israel, what's it saying here? Both the men and the women. For Aaron had pursued peace. He promoted love between the disputing parties and between man and wife. Oyev shalom v'roidev shalom. That was Aaron's motto. That was his MO. He tried to bring peace to people and bring peace, especially to husbands and wives. His trick is he would tell each of them privately that they really had good feelings for each other, when there always is. When there's two people in a dispute, there is usually some common ground, and they just need to be able to find it, and Aaron was able to help them each find that common ground. Okay, the next Rashi is a technical one. Okay, chapter 21. We're going on now to continuation of what happened with the Jewish people as they are going in the Midbar, in the desert. Vayishma Knani Melech Arad, the Knani king of Arad, heard of Yeshiv Benegev, who lived in the south. Ki ba Yisrael, he heard that the Israelites had come derech ha'asarim vayilcham Yisrael vayesh mimenu shvi. He heard that they were coming by the route of the spies, that direction, and he waged war against Israel and took them from them a captive. Vayishma HaKnani, who are we talking about? Or what did he hear first? Rashi's first going to say, what did he hear? He heard that Aaron had died and that the clouds of glory had departed. The Anani HaKavid were no more there. Who are they? This is Amalek. Amalek was always a chastising whip for Israel, ready at any time to met out punishment. Yeshiv by Negev, who lived in the south, this refers to Amalek. In case you were wondering who is this person, it was Amalek. As it says, the Amalekis dwell in the southland. They changed their language to speak in the language of Canaan so that the Israelites would pray to the Holy One, blessed be He, to deliver the Canaanites into their hands. And since they were not Canaanites, they would get away with it. They would be okay. Their prayers would have no effect. But Israel saw that they were dressed like Amalekis, though they spoke in a Canaanite tongue, so it did not work. We will pray generally for success. Instead of praying for success specifically against Canaanites, and then the Amalekis would get away with punishment, or with this war, they'd be able to be successful. They davened just generally to be successful. Note that in these sources, these sources of the Medrash Agada, the Amalekis changed their dress as well. And that version is found also in the Rigo edition of Rashi. So there's other editions that say no, they also changed the first one said they just changed their language to speak like the Canaanites, but they didn't change their dress, and that's what outed them. But other versions say that they changed both their language and their dress. The Yemenite manuscript, however, conforms with our reading that they only, so it seems like the consensus is that they only changed their language, and that's how they were found out to be Amalekis. Derech ha'asarim, the route of the spies, the southern route taken by the spies. Okay. But Yeshiv men Shvi, and they took them a captive. It was only a single maidservant. So, pasuk number 2. Vayidar Yisrael neder la Hashem. Israel made a vow. The Jewish people made a vow to Hashem. Vayemer im nasan titen es ha'am hazeh. If you deliver these people into biyadi, into our hand, v'hacharamti es arayim, we will consecrate their cities. Rashi says we will consecrate their spoils to heaven. Vayishma Hashem b'kol Yisrael, and Hashem heard their voice. Vayitin es haknani Vayacharim eshem ves arehem vayikroshim amakim chomra. He heard their voice and he delivered the Canaanites. He destroyed them, and the Jewish people destroyed them and consecrated their cities. And he called the place Horma. Destroyed them by execution. Their cities, he consecrated them to heaven. Vayisu mehara har derech Yam Suf. They journeyed from Mount Har by way. Okay, welcome. They journeyed from Mount Har by way of the Red Sea. Lisbar as a aretz, to encircle the land of Edom. Remember, because they couldn't go through. Vatiktsar nefesh ha'am badarach, and people became disheartened because of the way. It was a long way, and they became, since Aaron had died and this war had come upon them, they turned back to the Red Sea route, which is the route they returned to after the decree, because of the sin of the spies, so had been issued against them. So they're going a little bit here in circles. So to circle the land of Edom, since they did not allow them to pass through their land. People became disheartened because of the way, because of the hardships of traveling, which was hard for them. They said, now we are so close to enter the land, and we are turning back. So did our fathers turn back and remain for 38 years until today. Therefore, they became disheartened by the hardships of traveling. You know, I take a trip for 8-9 hours with my kids, and I get disheartened. So maybe 40 years in the desert does that. Pasuk number 5. We've heard this one before. The people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the desert? For there is no bread and no water. And we are disgusted with this rotten bread. So let's go into some of the Rashis. Against Moses and against God and against Moshe, they equated the servant with the master by saying against God and against Moshe. Obviously, you can't compare God to Moshe, Moshe to God. Why have you brought us up? Both of them were considered equal. And we are disgusted. This too denotes intolerance and loathing. With this rotten bread, what does it mean rotten bread? It was man. So Rashi says, this is an interesting thing about the man. Since the man was absorbed into their limbs, and they didn't and not excreted from their bowels, they called it rotten. They said, this manna will eventually swell up in our stomachs. Is there any mortal who ingests but does not excrete? So they were kind of, I don't know why it took them so long to say this, but they were being a little nervous about the fact that there was no waste from the man. It fully was absorbed by your body. Vayishlach, but they're complaining about it. Vayishlach Hashem ba'am. God did not take lightly to this. He sends venomous esanachashim hasrafim, venomous snakes. Vayinashku esa'am vayamas am rav mi Yisrael. It says fire burning snakes, right? But Rashi just explains that it's venomous snakes because they burn a person with the venom of their fangs. So that's just how you call them nechashim srafim. You shouldn't think it's actual fiery snakes. It just means venomous snakes because that's what the venom does. Why snakes? Rashi says, let the snake, which was smitten for speaking evil to Chava, to Eve, come and punish those who spread slander about the man. Let the snake, for which all types of food taste the same, come and punish those ingrates, for whom one thing, the manna, changes into various tastes. So, two aspects. First of all, the snake, everything tastes the same, and the man tastes exactly however you want it to taste, and you're complaining about it. Let's send the snake. People came to Moshe, we have sinned. For we have spoken against Hashem. Pray to Hashem that He remove the snakes from among us. So Moshe prayed on behalf of the people. From here we see, so Moshe prayed. From here we learn that someone who is asked to forgive should not be so cruel so as not to forgive. We have to constantly have our doors open for forgiveness. Vayemru Hashem al Moshe, asay lecha saraf, v'sim osei al nes, v'haya kol hanoshach v'ra osei v'chaye. Hashem said to Moshe, make yourself a serpent and put it on a pole, and let whoever is bitten look at it and live. Even if a dog or a donkey bit him, he would suffer injury and steadily deteriorate. But a snake bite would kill quickly. Oh, he's saying in general, a dog and a donkey, you would slowly deteriorate, but a snake bite was much more dangerous. A venomous snake bite, they would die very quickly. That is why it says here, we'll look at it, a mere glance. But regarding the snake bite, he says he would gaze. And whenever a snake bit a man, he would gaze. For a snake bite would not heal unless one gazed at the copper snake intently. A rabbi said, does a snake cause death or life? However, when Israel looked heavenward and subjected their hearts to their Father in heaven, they would be healed. But if not, they would waste away. So you didn't just have to look at the snake. You had to also subject your heart to your Father in heaven. You had to do tshuva and look at the snake and the snake that was on the stick, and you would be healed. And Moshe did exactly like he said. He made a copper snake, and he put it on a pole. And whenever a snake bit a man, he would gaze upon the copper snake and live. Until today, this is still a symbol of healing, right? You see on ambulances and everyone, many medical, the stick with the snake. That all comes from this story. All right, let's go back to the Tanya. We are in Shar Hayichud Ve'emunah, chapter 11, where we talked about how the letters, the letters and speech of Hashem is what makes created beings into beings and keeps them into beings. So now we're going to talk about what is higher. See, generally, machshava and dibur, thought and speech, are lower than seichel, right? Are lower than chachma. They're lower than intellect. So the question is now, what's higher, the intellect of humanity, of created beings, or the letters of these spheres, these letters that are coming down for creation? In truth, however, the letters of speech from above, the supernal letters of speech, is much higher than chachma, v'seichel, wisdom and intellect of created beings. In this, they differ from the letters of man's thought and speech, which are inanimate and belong to a level far lower than intellect. Within the human itself, within man itself, thought and speech are much lower than intellect. But over here, so the human's intellect is still lower than Oisies, and the Alter Rebbe is going to prove it. Because with these letters, that is how man was created. So obviously, whether it's intellect or not, man was created with the letters of God. So these letters must be on a higher level. Since wisdom and intellect are derived from these letters, it is obvious that the letters themselves are far superior to them. and even just with breath alone, like it says in the pasuk, "Vayifach biyapav nishmas adam," and he breathed into his nostrils a soul of life. V'im kain, therefore, hadibor v'havel ha'elyon, the breath and words from above, who mokar hachachma v'asechel sheb'nishmas adam harishin. It is the source of the chachma of Adam Harishon. Hal kloileles kol hanishmas hatzadikim, which includes all the souls. Adam Harishon's soul included all the souls to come. Shehem gedolim mimalachi asharis, who are superior to the ministering angels. V'hainu lefisha oisias diburai yisparich hem bechinas hamshachas koches v'chayes mimidos yisparich. That's because, like we said before, the oisias, the letters, the supernal letters, these come from the midas, the emotive attributes of Hashem. So they must be on a higher level than even the intellect of humans. Remember, because that is what created them. So if it's creating them, it must be higher than them. Which are united with his essence. And we're talking about right now about the midasav, the attributes, the emotive attributes. They are united, like we said yesterday and a couple of days before. They're completely united, but tachlis hayichud, in complete unity with Hashem, which is high, infinitely higher than the level of wisdom in created beings. In quotations, they're not termed letters only in related to us. Not in relation to us are they created. Letters seems to denote that they're on a lower level, right? They're lower than Chachma when you say that they're just letters. But that is not in relation to created beings, because they're so much higher than created beings. That's only in relation to Hashem's Midas himself. Then let's read this note. That will explain it. The name letters, which signifies that they are lower than wisdom and intellect, right, is not applied to them in relation to created beings. But as explained earlier, they're far superior to created wisdom and intellect. Rather, this term is applied to them relative to God's emotive attributes, to his midas, in as much as they are only letters, revelations of these midas. So what are these letters? These are the 22 kinds of life forces corresponding to the 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Remember, we talked about yesterday how the letters shulchan, right? Or the letters mayim, water, all of these give the life force. Each one of those letters has its own power and life force, and the combination of them all is what sustains and gives life force to the water. And so with these letters, these combinations of letters, all the higher worlds and the lower worlds were all created from them. For so it arose in God's will and wisdom that he created the world with exactly 22 different kinds of hamshachos, going down, symptoms, going down, not fewer, not more. The hain chafpes oisios hakvuos bepa the lashain kiditnan besefer yitzira, and these are the 22 letters which are fixed in the mouth and tongue, as we have learned in Sefer Yetzirah. Utmunasam bechsav, and their written shape. I don't know if you know, the Hebrew letters' written shape actually has a lot of significance. Himoira al tzirur hamshachas k'ma yizpar lekaman. The shape of the letters of these utterances, as written in the Torah, indicates the form and of the flow, as will be explained later. So the aleph flows in the way of an aleph. It has a pinta left it has a dot at the top and a pinta left on the bottom. It has a dot at the bottom, and it has a line in between that goes down. That's what an aleph looks like, right? That is significant. That is how it is. That is how it is mamshech. That is how it comes down. And the combination of letters is what creates each item into being. Shagam oisiyes hadibur v'machshava shabnefesh ha'adam heim hamshachis ma'aseicha ba'amidus shabnefesh mimahusam ba'atzmusa k'mashi yispar b'makam acher. For the letters of speech and thought in the human soul are also outflows from the essence and being of the intellect and the emotive attributes, as it explains elsewhere. So just to explain a little bit what today's Tanya talked about. Today's Tanya was saying we were using yesterday very much the words as letters and thought, the letters of thought and the letters of speech. These sound like lower letters, lower levels than Chachma and Bina, than intellect and understanding, right? But really, what we are talking about when we say human chachma, human intellect, that actually comes from these letters of speech and thought of Hashem. The letters of speech and thought are significantly, infinitely on a higher level than human intellect, because it's created from that. They're only called letters of thought and speech, not in relation to us, but in relation to the midas of Hashem, in relation to the attributes of Hashem. It was a pleasure today to learn with you. Oh, the Tehillim. This time I have it open. Elliot, for you. I have it ready. Chapters 44 to 48. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I hope we do lots of learning today and lots of happiness and health and good things.
Thank you so much. So when we daven, the words are even